Okay, good evening everyone, and welcome to public, councillors and everyone who is here to help with this evening's Scrutiny Panel meeting. It's 6 o'clock, so we're going to make a start. I think everything is live. I can see it's live. Okay. We have to just go through some housekeeping matters. If in the event of a fire or any incidents, there are none planned that we're aware of in terms of any testing, please evacuate this evening if you hear an alarm by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street, whichever is appropriate, and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwell Street. This meeting is being recorded. It's being broadcast over the internet on the council's YouTube channel, and it'll also be available to watch on demand. I have a tendency to talk a bit loudly into the microphone, which results in popping, which I've learned. So I'm going to refrain from doing that and just highlight to anyone else that gets enthusiastic, don't speak too closely to the microphone. If you've got a loud voice, it might be problematic. Discreet use of your mobile phones and other online connected devices are absolutely fine, but be discreet, and if an alarm or a noise goes off, then we might have discretion to inform the Mayor of Colchester, who would be grateful for a contribution towards his charities if you disrupt the meeting by not turning your phone off. Thank you. We may have a break this evening at 7:30, subject to the progress of business. I am Councillor Darius Laws. I'm a councillor for Rural North Ward, and I'm the chairman of this panel, and I'm here tonight joined by the deputy chair to my right, Councillor Dennis Willits. We'll start with Councillor Willits and then walk around and introduce everyone, please.
Dennis Willits, Lexton and Braeswick Ward.
Councillor Thomas Rowe, Rural North Ward.
Sam McLean, Newtown and Christchurch.
Councillor Faye Smalls, Old Heath, The Hive and Rowhedge.
Councillor Sam McCarthy representing Shrub End Ward.
Councillor Tracy Arnold representing Stanway.
Councillor Alison Jay, Portfolio Holder for Economy Transformation and Performance.
Chisara Cosma, Programme and Performance Manager.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Richard Block, Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you, everyone. There are no substitutions that I'm aware of this evening. We have no urgent items that I'm aware of. I'm looking around the room. There are none. Okay. Do we have any declarations of interests, councillors, colleagues? It appears not, and therefore I ask you to consider the accuracy of the minutes from the previous meeting, which I'm very content with. Do I see everyone content with those minutes? Agreed en masse, that's wonderful. Item 7, decisions taken under special urgency provisions. Sorry, Owen.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, we've got the General have your say.
We have. I was getting excited and ahead of myself. Let's have the General have your say, so forgive me. Can I call, please, Lance Peaking, who I believe wishes to speak to us this evening. So you have 3 minutes on microphone, and then I or someone may well respond to your poetry, and then you'll have a subsequent minute to respond to that. But you're most welcome, and thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting this scrutiny meeting. A welcome affirmation of Council's commitment to work openly and transparently for the public. Will committee here publicly affirm, after your own code, that Council do not tolerate either discrimination or bias? Why then, at the recent Have Your Say, was an alderman allowed to go over the allotted time by 1 minute 12 seconds without interruption, and the next speaker interrupted after 6 seconds? Also, a councillor may attend this committee meeting of which they're not a member, and is afforded 5 minutes, whereas the public is graced with only 3. Why does council consider it acceptable to discriminate in this way? And why is it that the new security search as a condition of entrance only applies to members of the public? The sign at the door says that the door policy is for everyone's safety. So why, rationally, are councillors and staff not searched? Is this not rule for thee, but not for me? Now, councillors are obligated to act and take decisions impartially, fairly and on merit, using the best available evidence and without discrimination or bias. So then, what threat assessment did council rely upon in forming its new door policy? What threat can council evidence? Can council also confirm the additional costs borne by the public in their pursuit of this change policy? A policy stance which, moreover, is rarely pursued by other councils. Security have expressed that the Town Hall is a private building, employing a my house, my rules arrangement. Can committee confirm that the Town Hall is a private building as it is listed as public, incidentally housing 21 public artworks? Because if this is not a private space, rules may not then be arbitrarily imposed without regard to legislation, which does require that a search may only be conducted where there is just cause. That is, where security genuinely and rationally perceive a threat. Can committee confirm that council operates within the confines of all legislation? The public are reasonable. Council actions must be evidence-based, as only then may public themselves understand whether their actions, councils, are both rational and proportionate. If they are neither, then would this committee agree that they must, in retrospect, be reversed? Does committee agree that there is a profound problem more generally with the faith, trust and confidence that the public have in both central government and its agents, the councils? Would committee agree that in allowing for bias and discrimination to remain, whether within meetings or as people enter into what is after all their building, then rather than build trust, faith and confidence, these provocative actions erode it further? I certainly would not want to see my wife treated in the fashion that I have witnessed. Moreover, to what end is such behaviour rational and to the public good? How is this not harmful? After all, would committee confirm that all government are bound by their singularly most important constitutional obligation that they may do nothing that is to the prejudice of the people? Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Lance. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
I will look around the room and see if anyone else wishes to step in, but I'm going to give you my opinion on some of that for what it's worth, if that's useful. You make a very interesting point about the 3 versus 5 minutes. If anything, actually, I would like to see councillors tightening their speeches and get down to 3. So you make a very interesting point there that potentially could be looked at constitutionally. We have a wonderful facility here in Colchester where members of the public can come along. I'm encouraged to come along and have their say. So I would do everything within my gift to protect that right. I happen to take a view on the security searching you mentioned. I take some comfort in it in the context that 2 MPs have been killed in the last decade. And whilst I probably could handle myself maybe more so than my mother, if she was a councillor, I'm using a personal example so you get my drift, but I think that having the security searching there gives comfort to some members. I don't have a problem with it. In fact, I don't have a problem with being searched myself. There is a rule that councillors have to wear their lanyards in the building, so they're identified, which is fair to members of the staff here who are not as familiar with everyone, because some people work at different shift patterns on different evenings. That seems reasonable. I would say to you that the last occasion when there was a problem at the door, the meeting was delayed by half an hour. And, you know, that was unfortunate for some of us that had to be elsewhere later on. And for those that give up their time, who rush, as you know, who rush after work or who rush after getting the kids some dinner to get in here for 6 o'clock, which is difficult. So delaying that meeting was significant. And I observed some of the conversations that were going on. And I don't see any malice in asking people to turn out their pockets and within the rules of how you use those electro devices to search for metals. There are rules, I understand, if you have a pacemaker, etc. I don't think that's unreasonable. And it's interesting you don't see that happening at other local authorities. Actually, who's to say that they're right and we're not, you know? But you make an interesting point. Going back to your final thing about faith in politicians, look, all I can do on a personal level is try and speak the truth and try and stick by the Nolan principles in my conduct to people that I may politely disagree with, but I'll happily have a conversation with them. And I would implore all councillors to take that approach. I rather liken it to having a bottle of wine with a friend, because by the end of the bottle, you're truthful with each other. And if you can do that with a stranger, you're in a good place, actually, I think, because we should always speak the truth. As to your wider point, though, about faith and politicians, you know, what can we do here as district councillors when there might be politicians throughout the centuries that have had challenges in persuading members of the public that they are there for the right reasons? I know I'm doing my best to be here for the right reasons, and that's why I encourage this chat. I've given you too much there, but it was from the heart. Would anyone else like to say anything on this?
Hello. Yeah, I'd just like to say, as I'm a fairly new councillor, when there's searches, I'd be happy to partake in that because we're used to that when we go to events. You know, the magnets, turning your bag out. So just, you know, I can't speak for others, but I would be more than happy and also, you know, to present more equal. Sorry, I've lost my. But anyway, I'll be happy to do it. Yeah.
You've got your. Does anyone else want to say anything before I? Okay, Lance.
Actually, I'm of mind not to address those points directly. Appreciate your point, and I think that would be good. No evidence, no bias, no discrimination. The question we need to understand, and the question that I would ask you to consider, is why the fear? Why the fear of the public? Now, I understand to a certain or greater extent. Look at the state of our central government. You can't approach it. Now, I don't want to see that replicated at a local level. I don't think it's necessary. The reason why there is fear there is because, very simple reason, it's harm. I don't harm any one of you, I don't fear any one of you. You should not fear me or indeed anyone else. Why? Because I present no harm to you. If there is no harm and I cause you no harm, I have no rational basis to have any fear whatsoever. Turn it on its head. Why does any government hate or fear its public? It's because they're committing them harm, left, right and centre, day in, day out. Bugger. if I could. Our constitution, for what it's worth, is based on the concept of do no harm. It's not very well understood. It's a huge problem because we don't understand what is a very sublimely brilliant constitution, which is supported in law. If people took the time to understand and appreciate how it's meant to work, how government, you, I, and anyone else is not allowed to cause harm, the obligation that I see and why I'm here today, sorry, I'm jumping to make it shorter, is because where I see harm and where you see harm, we're all individually obligated to bring it to people's attention. Because once they understand the harm, they're obligated to stop it. In stopping a harm, we remove the problem. What we look for in everything, where there is a harm, is a remedy. It's a legal basis that we're brought up on. I would ask, what can anyone do locally, nationally, is insert accountability. It's why I like this meeting. I think it's the right thing. I hope it doesn't come to an end for whatever reason. But if we start to recognise that the public have got a problem with the harm that's visited upon them, and they look to bring it to your attention, when you understand a harm, you must act upon it, be that stopping or offering remedy. I think if we approach those things in that way, then council up and down the country will be applauded for their actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. And as you observed there, I used the chairman's discretion to let you have a little extra time. And actually, perhaps I did that because I didn't see the room was as packed this evening as it was on previous occasions when people are looking at the stopwatch a bit more. It's in the chair's discretion, sir. But thank you for your contribution. Right, thank you. Even though I raced ahead, we will now continue to the agenda, which is item 7, decisions taken under special urgency provisions. There are no such decisions. Item 8, cabinet or portfolio decisions called in for review. There are none. Okay, item 9, items requested by members of the panel and others. We have none. We did last month, so this is an important item that we have on the standing order. Moving on to item 10 then, year-end April 22 to March 23 key performance indicator report. I'm probably looking in the direction of the portfolio holder, Councillor Alison Jay, with her wonderful support team. In your hands.
Good evening. Hopefully you've all seen the detailed and I hope self-explanatory charts for the main key performance indicators that have been updated with some benchmarking following comments at previous scrutiny panels. Having had a look at them in detail myself, I'm fairly comfortable with where they are. There's obviously a number that are green, and the teams that have achieved them, I think, are to be congratulated on achieving those targets. There's 5 that are currently at red, and in each of the comments there should be some idea of the strategy to move on from those. I don't know if anybody, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to go through the KPIs and raise with others. Yeah. Okay, so if we look at the first page, sorry, you're going to have to bear with me, I'm one-armed. The time to process housing benefit, we're well above target, and I think that's something that the team should be congratulated upon. I also understand that we have some of the lowest processing times in the country for new benefits. Again, the next is time to process local council tax new claims and changes, which again, we are well below the target. Additional homes provided, as you can see, we're quite short of that target. Is everybody happy with the reasons that have been given there? And I think it's only fair to say that this problem will probably get significantly worse with the lack of homes available and changes in terms of refugees, asylum seekers seeking accommodation in Colchester towards the end of the year. But there are plans to look at that, I understand, from the portfolio holder. Affordable homes, again, we're over target in terms of affordable homes, and I understand that that will continue. Number of households in temporary accommodation, that's obviously linked with the lack of available housing, and we are over target currently. If anybody's got anything in particular they want to raise with that.
Yes, so the people in temporary accommodation, so obviously it's gone up, so from the April it was 223, and then in the March where it's last counted, 298 households. Do we know that figure? Are they new? How many have sort of carried on? What's the turnover sort of thing? So people, out of the 223 that we had in April, how many are still, or are they new? I'm not putting it very well. The sort of people who have just stayed in temporary accommodation, or is it, how do we know out of that 298, how many are new people, or how many, is it just the figure that's grown, the people, the families? Yeah, I don't think I've put that very... Yes, and also I think it would be good to know out of those 298 households that we last counted in March, how many have got children as well, because obviously that's significant.
I understand a number of those on the list are large families.
Yeah, that's completely understandable, yeah.
Sorry. Average time to relet council homes, a target 26.73 achieved, and processing of major planning applications on target as well. Is that really 100%? I think there's yeah. I mean, from my point of view, I think we can see that a lot of these are, the targets are being set at the right level, and that we're achieving those targets. I don't know if we just want to have a look at those that are currently red and flag them. The one that came to mind from my point of view is the sickness rate in rates in days, where our target is 8. We're currently running at 9.1, but if everybody's seen on page 37, I think there's a breakdown where it's obviously significantly higher in the environmental teams, which is a factor we're aware of and is being looked at as part of the waste review strategy. That's something I'll be keeping an eye on. I did also pick up today that the corporate and improvement services is almost at that target compared with some of the other departments, so I'm going to be asking some questions. I have gone to Jess Brown at HR today, just asking for some details on their priorities and the plans that are sort of in place and whether it's an impact of COVID, long COVID, that's actually what I've experienced elsewhere is people are taking time off, whereas in the past they probably wouldn't with COVID. If they'd had a cold or flu, they'd have gone into work. Now they're actually actively taking time off, and the number of staff with long COVID type problems, as well as other issues, which looking at the national targets seems to be, or the national levels of sickness.
Councillor Jay, if I may, so on this figure, which is obviously something that we are all alive to, and it is noted in the supplementaries around how mental health is being cited as a reason for sickness, and I just wonder if maybe you could give us an insight and some assurance here around what's being done to try and stem some of that off. So are you confident that we have in place robust and very highly visual in signposting for mental health first aiders? Because that's something that's, you know, in my short lifetime, something that I just didn't know about a decade ago. And now I go into corporate offices all the time and construction sites, and you see it very explicitly laid out that, you know, if you're struggling for a whole host of reasons, whether it's, you know, something in your personal life, something at work, if you're stressed and your mental health is suffering, there are people on hand who are trained first aiders in that area. I just would like maybe an insight into that, some assurance.
That was a question I've asked this afternoon.
Chairman,
I have no response to somebody else.
Can I add an additional point to that as well? Can I just, can I ask that I didn't see anything in the document with regards to how that compares to the private sector. Apologies if I missed it. It would be good to know how we compare to similar organisations in the private sector, and if we've reached out to those organisations to if they're better than us or if they're worse than us, maybe we can, you know, maybe we can help them out. But if they are better than us, it would be good for us to understand from their perspective what they think they're doing to have a reduced number of sick days. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just, I think the question about the kind of support that's available to staff is probably more of an officer question in terms of, you know, how staff are being looked after. And absolutely, we have a network of mental health first aiders, and we've had a conscientious effort to increase those across all services. Historically, they were, it's fair to say, more prevalent in those kind of office-based roles, but we're pleased to say we've now got that network extended across our frontline services as well, which was a conscientious effort for those more manual workers to have their mental health first aiders. We've also got a network of wellbeing champions across the organisation. We offer a range of support mechanisms, quite a detailed employee assistance programme where staff can access free counselling at any time without going through management, just phoning a number and then accessing that, as well as other support when they're in difficulty. So I am confident we're doing a lot. There's always more we can do, always more we can learn, but we do have quite a network of support around staff wellbeing.
So, sorry, do we know how we compare against the private sector? Do we have those numbers?
No, we don't at the moment, but we can include some benchmarking in the, as we proposed for the half-year mark of the KPIs. We'll make sure that private is included in the sickness one as well.
Yeah, it'd be good to know how we benchmark against other councils as well. I know we had this conversation last time about, you know, similar councils versus, you know, the best council. It would be good to get a range of those and understand how we compare. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
So we'll compare with the councils across the whole suite of KPIs, and then we'll make sure the sickness is included with the private sector as well.
So it's not just the local councils; it would be sort of we broad out. It would be a broader range, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Jay.
Okay. I think moving on, if we're happy with that. I've had to get it. Send it the wrong way. We're looking at the residual household waste per household, which I know we had some discussions on before, and I think there's more detail in there now that you can see that although we didn't quite make target this year, it was only slightly below target, and there's actually been an increase over the last 12 months. I think in all honesty, looking at the figures, it's going to take quite a big behavioural change to get any big impact on any of those figures, but those are the areas that I think we need to keep an eye on.
Councillor J, members probably will want to have a view on that, but before we do, I'm rushing ahead.
Sorry,
The floor is yours. My apologies.
yeah, sorry, I had just a few points on the sickness. No, that's absolutely fine. So, not with the I think we established last time that the numbers are high in environment, and that is due to probably the people doing the physical jobs, the refuse workers. I'm wondering, are there options for them to come back and do light duties? Are there alternatives? Because clearly, if somebody's got a physical injury, we wouldn't be expecting them to do that heavy work. So I don't know, and that can link with mental health if people are stuck at home. But I realise, this is just an idea. We've just had the hottest June, although the temperatures, I don't think they've gone sort of over to 25, 26. Last year we had some really hot weather. I wonder what mitigations we have for the refuse workers in that sort of weather. Thinking about, you need to drink more, you need toilet breaks, have they got facilities for breaks and bathrooms, that kind of thing. Maybe they start early, because I'm conscious we're coming up to the hot weather, and I'm a bit biased because I work outside, so I can imagine these issues. So to try and prevent stuff like planning for the hot weather, and where we haven't got wheelie bins, because that I don't know if that is a factor in the injuries, if it is better to have the wheelie bins. I'm not a refuse worker, so I'm imagining it is better to have them. So where we don't have them, are there plans that we can have them? Some areas, like where I live, it would be almost physically impossible to have them. So I don't know what mitigations we have there. Sorry, that's it.
Okay, well, a couple of easy questions. I think the light duties, that would be part of the return to work, and that's a legal requirement. Mitigations in hot weather, I know that they start early shifts, they do shorter shifts, they take water with them. Householders quite often help out by leaving out water, so that's certainly taken on board. And in terms of wheelie bins, there is a waste review going on. There is no doubt that it's those lifting these sacks that suffer the biggest injuries, and that's something that is currently under consideration.
Yeah, what toilet facilities do they have on the rounds? Because that might put them off drinking if they think they can't go to the toilet.
That's something I don't know, to be honest.
So yeah, absolutely. We do provide portable toilet provision. It's fairly rudimentary, but it does allow staff to be able to utilise it if they're out on rounds. Absolutely.
Councillor Willis.
Yeah, Chairman, can I comment or ask a question on the mental health issues? Some of the problems clearly arise for reasons which are completely unrelated to the job which is being done for the council, but impacts on our statistics, because it diminishes the capability of the person involved to do their job. There are, however, cases where we have sort of round pegs in square holes. People are appointed to a job which they are perhaps not suited to. And if I could exemplify that, one time I was working in a forensic team, and we had this guy who was absolutely brilliant, but he hadn't realised when he was appointed that he had to go into court and give evidence on his forensic findings. And this caused him very severe mental anguish. He didn't realise and didn't want to be grilled by a barrister over his findings, and it significantly affected his ability to do the job. That was really not his fault, it was our fault, in that when we'd appointed him, we hadn't assured ourselves that he was robust enough to do all parts of the job. So to what extent is our mental health issues caused by matters which just come along and are incidental, or are really people not doing a job which causes them, which they're happy with and are absolutely confident with, and this causes them stress, which then reflects on the sick leave and their ability to do the job fully?
It's probably another one for me to answer in terms of the kind of how we manage our people. Obviously, the first things first, we try and get the right people into the right job through a robust recruitment and selection process. We do have a 6-month probation period for all new starters. And I'll be honest with you, we do make the difficult decision to actually part with people during that 6-month period. It is something that we are prepared to do, and it happens. It's robust and it's the right thing to do. We'll obviously provide the utmost support during 6 months for individuals to make sure that they are obviously absolutely in the wrong job, and it's not just around development. So it's a supportive approach, but we will make difficult decisions. They are the most difficult decisions we have to make. If we do find people struggling, we have quite a lot of support, as I've described, around our employee assistance programme. We would look to provide development, but again, we do make the very difficult decision through quite a robust performance capability process to part company with staff if all else fails. It's the last resort. If all of the support mechanisms and the assessment to work out if someone absolutely can do a job point to the fact that they are really in the wrong role, they're not capable of performing a role, we do make the difficult decision to part company with them. Again, it's one of the most difficult things that we have to do as officers, but we have to balance the kind of individual needs with the fact that we've got work to do for the residents of Colchester, and we need to deliver that work in an efficient, effective way.
The right way around, yeah. Happy to move on then. Okay, so we were looking at residual waste, and this is residual household waste per household, which I think when we looked at it, when we were looking at setting KPIs, we recognised that it wasn't quite where we wanted to be, but actually there is an upward trend over the last 12 months. I think there's some good explanation there. Has anybody got anything they wanted to raise?
I'll let you go first.
Councillor Willits first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. On the residual household waste per household, the target is being met virtually, stretching target, perhaps a little way to go. But my comment mainly is that there's a throwaway remark. The performance is well above that of other councils. I think in the past we have questioned this and said, can we see as members the benchmarking which enables us to make that claim? Once upon a time, we used to get the league table statistics for the whole of all Essex authorities, giving their residual waste per household and their recycling percentages, so that we could see just where the council was, our council was, in relation to the others. That seems to have become a bit of a secret of the last couple of years, Chairman. Perhaps the information was not available during COVID or was difficult to gather, but now things are normalising. I would certainly want to see just where we are and the extent to which our performance is well above that of the other councils. That applies to both the residual household waste and also the recycling percentage. And I have a second question on the residual household waste per household. The reduction down to target has been achieved, according to the report, by rigorously enforcing the collection of only 3 black bags per household and no more than 180 litres of volume waste from wheelie bins. So if we are enforcing rigorously the amount of residual waste that we collect, what is happening to the excess which our residents wanted to put in black bags and have it taken away, or into their wheelie bins and have it taken away, but are no longer not doing so, which allows us to meet our target? What is our view on where that is going, and is it going in an antisocial direction, like into the nearest ditch or being thrown away? Or is it really a change, a revolutionary change in the way people are living their lives and managing their waste? Thank you.
Councillor Willits, very quickly, just to add to that point as well. If we're rigorously enforcing that, does that mean that we're pretty much we're tapped out as far as we can go with regards to residual waste, and we can't really get much further? Because I don't know, there doesn't seem to be much, other than, I think you mentioned it earlier, behavioural change. There doesn't seem to be much addition in the documentation around how are we going to improve those numbers in the future. And if what we're going to do is reinforce the 3 bags, how do we get down to 2 bags, 1 bag, no bags? What's the plan to do that? From my understanding, we have in our strategic plan 75% recycling as a goal. Is it okay? Fair enough. Well, there you go then. Maybe it should be 75. What are we actually doing to get to that point? As it ties into obviously all these questions around the residual waste. I'll let you answer the questions, and we'll probably go into a bit more detail on that.
Let's have Shazara first on that point that Dennis made, and then let's see if Richard and Alison want to come in on that.
Data is available, absolutely, and we actually have a choice through the Local Government Association, the LG Inform platform, where several local authorities participate with data. We have a choice of the groups we want to compare ourselves against, and that's definitely something we can include, again, in that benchmarking report we can prepare for the half-year point, with a descriptor of the group we're choosing to compare against, and the visual of how we look against our neighbours in Essex, across the country, whatever data we want to see. As long as the other local authorities participate with data and data is there, then we do have it. Yes.
Sorry, this might be a silly question, but do you have to choose one group for every, can you choose one group for every metric? Or does it have to be one group and then so it is one for each metric?
Flexible.
Thank you.
Flexible.
Chairman, I'm a simple sort of soul, and I realise that you can manipulate anything using statistics. So something really simple, like, there are 12 councils in Essex. We're all part of the Essex family. Can we have the league table just for Essex? I appreciate that it would probably be sort of more interesting to see the whole of the country, or perhaps 1 or 2 cherry-picked here and there. To me, the statistics for Essex is the sort of thing that I want to see, because they're all reasonably near. We relate to the same county council who do the waste disposal, and if it is possible, that is what I would like to see.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So absolutely, the Essex data can be provided. I just wanted to add some clarity as well, which is fairly hot off the press, announced by Michael Gove today, I think, which is the new offlog, which is an office to monitor local government. And there will be a greater emphasis on local government performance, and waste is one of the data subsets that offlog are going to be looking at, particularly recycling figures. So in fact, members now can go on the offlog data set and compare our recycling, and it will automatically throw up the kind of comparable authorities that central government think compare well to Colchester in terms of our demographics, and show you where we are. I did look, and we are in a very good position, so I would invite members to go on offlog's recycling data and have a look, but certainly there's going to be a greater emphasis from central government on this as well.
I mean, I hope you'd agree that we should also be looking at what the top numbers are, not just hoping that we're above the median average. We should be pushing, the boundaries, and Colchester should be trying to aim for, if we put 70% in there, I'd like to know how long are we going to get? How long is it going to take us to get to 70%? And outside of behavioural changes, which I think is a bit sort of difficult for us, or the people, the council to manage. It's very difficult. I mean, I'd like to know how you think you're going to change people's behaviour, short of, doing something radical like implementing wheelie bins everywhere, or, reducing the number of black bags or something. I don't know what's the plan. I don't see anything from the council perspective as to how are we going to get to that 75% or 70%, sorry.
Well, there is a base strategy review underway at the moment.
Yeah.
I assume that that's what it's answering. I mean, in terms of where we are, again, that report, I can throw some figures. So
Yeah, cool.
First out of 60 for recycling contamination rates, and do third out of 60.
What, in the country?
For these 16 units.
Okay.
But we can obviously get that data.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
And nationally, it is available.
Yeah. Because sorry.
You know, again, I'd agree that what we need to drive is how we improve this
Yeah.
figure and the amount of tolerance that is in that figure. We might be that we've plateaued and that's something again.
Yeah.
Certainly in terms of street bag limit, they are very robust. We've all seen the green labels
Yep.
on black bags that aren't picked up. They are later picked up by the team, I think, or they go back to, I've got a warning in Bibles at the moment that's going back to residents. So there's a limit to what we can do.
Yeah.
I would certainly ask where the excesses are going, that's something that is of interest, I can bring that back.
Yeah, I always think it's very difficult because, you know, once you put a green sticker on there, if someone decides not to do anything with it, you can't just leave it in the street. So ultimately, where does it go? But yeah, I mean, also benchmarking ourselves against the highest in the country, it'd be interesting to know what are they actually doing that's different to us to get to those highest, you know, 60s, 70s, whatever they're at. I don't know what they're at. But it'd be interesting to talk to them and find out what they're
I had
at.
a conversation today,
Yeah.
the council is currently down in Bournemouth.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And he's actually met with, I can't remember her name, Sarah, but from Three Rivers, who are
Brilliant.
top recycling in the country. And
Yeah.
put us in touch with her so that we can see what the best in the country are doing and where we're doing.
Yeah, that'd be really good because I think, you know, I think we'd get agreement pretty much across everyone if we come up with some sensible ideas as how we can push that through. It is something that residents do care about.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. I'm just looking around the room to see if anyone else wants to make a contribution because we've got to the end of that section, and I guess we have to note it. We have to. I'm hearing Councillor Willits. We're going to be noting where we're at with this. We are going to look forward to the half-year report, which will have some more of the comparison data and detail in there, the benchmarking that I think we're all excited to see. Is there anything else? Dennis, Councillor Willits.
Chairman, at the end of this report, we all swell with pride because there is the awards and accreditations, which we seem to have skipped over. It's always great to see all the awards and accreditations and things that we've done extremely well at. It, however, lacks context because I don't know, we've got sort of 30 awards. Is it that we only entered 30, or there are only 30 awards in the country that we can enter, or that there were 3,000 awards and we failed on 2,970 of them and just received an award on 30 of them? So it's great to read these, but how are they chosen in bringing them to our attention, and to what extent do the awards actually signify our superb performance, if indeed it is superb performance?
I guess they're kind of put in as context around KPIs can be fairly cold, can't they? As you know, numbers. You've also we haven't talked about the many achievements against the strategic plan, action plan, in what was a difficult financial year last year. But this kind of just gives you a context of the cross section of accreditation. And they're not all awards or gold stars. They're accreditations as well to just show we actually challenge ourselves externally and get an external view about what we're doing, which I hope members would kind of encourage. That we don't just, we're not insular, we actually go and ask others to check our homework and give us a sense of how we're performing. And, you know, if the panel finds it useful to continue with them, we will carry on. If not, we won't.
Richard, I think that that we all find them very useful too. It adds colour, doesn't it? And it adds depth, and it makes it really clear to us that our staff, the people that serve residents here in Colchester, do go above and beyond, and having recognition for that in awards, for example, is a lovely thing to have. I guess where perhaps Councillor Willits, with knowing how Councillor Willits' mind works around these things, where he has a slight point is perhaps maybe it would be in the future an idea that we have an indication of, the percentage of awards entered and awards received. I think that's not an unreasonable point to make. Just to have that to refer back to and look at in the future. But it's an interesting discussion. Thank you.
Yes, Chairman, if I just add an example. I mean, the Green Flag Awards, superb to know that Castle Park and Colchester Cemetery and Crematorium have got their green flags. But what about the parks in my Lexton ward? I mean, have they failed, or were they not entered, or are they not eligible to enter? So these are the sort of questions which go around in my head when I read this sort of a report. It doesn't tell me enough to say, well, that's jolly good, or what about the Lexton?
And I think that point there illustrates where Councillor Willits is coming from, and it's from a very positive place.
Mr.
Councillor Rowe.
I think we're getting a little bogged down in awards and KPIs. To sort of a wider point around how much all this costs the taxpayer and what value for money we're getting. I think it would be nice to see from a benchmark perspective, how much does it cost us to administer these programmes versus how much it costs comparable councils to administer these programmes. Are we actually efficient and giving good value for money in what we're delivering here? And I think that would be very interesting to know, and not something that we often hear. I think that would be good to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking around the room, and I think we've probably come to the end of this item. Okay, moving on then to item 11. And this is obviously looking at things in the context of the 3 years, 2020 to 2023, the strategic plan, action plan, and some colour in here, it's fair to say. Councillor Jay.
Yeah, we cannot hear Councillor Jay's mic. The microphone is not being picked up on the feed.
Apologies, everyone. We apparently might have a technical issue with the microphone, so we're just going to swap over and see if we can establish that Councillor Alison Jay is in the room.
Still doesn't work for me. Sorry, Derek.
We're just going to check our feed to make sure that we can eliminate any technical issues that there might be. We're looking forward to welcoming Councillor Mark Corey in the not so distant future to come on to an important matter. In the interim, we're just having a little look at microphones. Things rarely go wrong, actually, in this department.
Something to do with me. Is that better? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that worked. Thank you.
Thank you. So to repeat myself, I think I was looking at challenging this in terms of other people challenging if there was anything that they wanted more detail on, or they felt was missing from the report.
Okay, I see Councillor Willits.
Chairman, my view on this is very close to my view on the awards, which I just stated. The report here identifies many issues where the council has achieved good things over the last year in the context of the strategic plan which council has set. But again, I find it a little difficult. I appreciate the goodness of it and the magnificence of all the work that's been done, but it's really difficult to put it in any performance context. I mean, firstly, it's a 3-year plan, and I'm not sure whether the issues being reported are related to all 3 years, or whether they're just relating to April 22 to March 23, because there seem to be odd items here that I've noticed which go back to earlier years, but it may be that they're continuous items and we're reporting on them each year. But there are no metrics, no targets set against many of these issues. So we're looking at good works, but unable to judge whether the performance was in fact the best possible performance, or medium, or below performance. And starting off with the response to climate emergency, here we have a list of excellent things that have been done in terms of reducing emissions, improving heating and ventilation, introduction of solar park and microgrid. But at the same time, under the climate emergency, we have failed to convert all our vehicles to electric, hydrogen, or other means, and moved away from petrol and diesel. So many people would say, this is a spectacular failure in that the council fleet is still pushing out carbon dioxide at perhaps a reduced rate, because we have got some fairly good clean engines in our freighters, but we haven't gone the entire distance. And when the climate emergency was originally brought in, I mean, many of us were saying, unless you put real money behind moving the council in terms of its climate emergency actions, it will just be lip service. And it appears that some work is being done, but you could argue that some of the more serious issues on climate emergency are just being overlooked because, as was said at the last meeting, it's just too expensive to move, say, the refuse collection service over to electric vehicles at the moment. So we continue to pollute the environment, but for reasons which we're able to balance in our own minds. So I think that just demonstrates that we don't have a metric, for instance, against climate emergency of what we're trying to achieve, and explaining the extent to which the achievements, and they are positive achievements, which we have in the report on the final year of the action plan. So it's difficult to understand whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's superb, or whether it's indifferent.
Obviously, take your point, Councillor Willits, and I'll hope you'll agree that the revised set of KPIs that this panel considered took account of that to give far more kind of quantifiable data that would support delivery against the new strategic plan. That suite of indicators certainly mapped across to respond to that point. So hopefully that will respond to that particular issue and those concerns, Councillor Willits.
I see Councillor Corey is indicating it might well be on this point, so let's welcome him in at this moment if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me, but not too much feedback.
Yeah, proceed.
But to be honest, Richard Block did just answer the point I was going to make, that we've exactly done what Councillor Willis has asked for by creating a metric in our new KPIs to monitor our progress on the climate action plan. So we've put in the action plan, we've already made very good progress on that, but it is with a goal to be net zero to be carbon neutral by 2030. I think we can get there on vehicles if the technology gets there quicker. And we have put in the KPIs to actually put the money where our mouth is and actually measure ourselves on that green work and that greening agenda. Thank you.
Chairman, if I can just reply, the agenda item here is the year-end report, April 2022 to 23, and I think my comments were quite valid in regard to that particular year, that the metrics are missing. I would certainly accept Councillor Corey's point that we have decided in future year there will be metrics there which enable us to better understand the achievements and the context of those achievements. But unfortunately, we are reviewing a year in which those metrics were not there. So I think it's valid to state that it is difficult to say in this year-end report, the last of the previous plan before we switch over to the new plan, it is difficult to understand whether we've done superbly well, just averagely well, or not as well as we could have done.
Just in addition to that point, Chair, going back to how much it costs the taxpayer, it would be interesting to understand, and I think this has been mentioned in previous meetings, how much is actually costing per tonne of carbon for us to reduce, and what value for money is the taxpayer getting for these? How do we compare against other councils with our reduction plans? Are we, where do we benchmark? What is this actually costing us? And where do we sit against other councils with regards to their plans and how much it's costing them? Obviously, I should imagine that's quite high on everyone's list given the cost of living crisis and the cost pressures that the council is facing. It'd be good to know, and I think the taxpayer would be interested to know how much this is costing us.
I would take on board some of these comments, but I would take you back to my understanding is that what we're looking at here is a strategic action plan rather than KPIs. So it is more a narrative. There is some KPI content in there, which obviously we can improve upon, but we are where we are in terms of this report. And are there particular holes that people want to highlight that we can have a look at? But this is really a review of where we've been, rather than a discussion.
I agree, but I do think it's important for us to, we need to discuss these, the numbers that we have and the previous numbers that we've done in previous years, so that we can understand going forward how we can get better at this. So I do think it's relevant, the questions that we're asking, and we should take them on board.
I don't disagree. Obviously, I'm not completely briefed on this, so I don't have a lot of that background information. So all I can do is take on board the recommendations of the Scrutiny Panel and bring them back at another time.
Sorry, it's not aimed necessarily at you.
I get that, but I wouldn't disagree. But to my point of view, this isn't about the KPIs and the management performance. This is about looking at the strategic document and what we've achieved in a narrative form, not a numerical performance management form.
Yeah, but I suppose you have to understand that so that going forward you know where you are in the future, right? So, I suppose it's all valid.
Okay, looking around the room. Councillor Jay, do you want to continue or
Well, I'm just, if there's other comments on other areas, then
I've got one, but I don't want to be greedy. I'm just trying to encourage other members to. Okay, so I just think it should be put on the record here. If you go to the last item on there, which is celebrating our heritage and culture, and I think it is worth us having a view on this in a way, because it isn't a statutory requirement that we do this, whereas we have to collect bins and deal with licensing and some other planning matters, etc. But heritage and culture is non-statutory. But for my money, it is something that we have decided collectively, politically, to empower our officers to go away and do. And I think we do a good job of it. I mean, you can see there some achievements. I mean, in coming on the back of COVID, we decided to reveal a Roman mosaic off the high street at cost. It's not quite finished yet, is it? But things like that contribute towards making Colchester feel and look different and special. And so we right to do all of that. And I think also there's a reference here to something very discreetly, if you've not if it's not hit you in the face yet, a capital bid to go in by our museum service to refurbish the Natural History Museum off the high street. I mean, that is a serious project and a really exciting opportunity. First time in 80 years to regenerate that part of the high street that needs it. It was going to be reliant on National Heritage Lottery funding to do it, but the fact that our officers are being proactive in seeking these opportunities. So I guess my message, and unless members have a different view or feel free to challenge, my message to Cabinet would be to continue with pressing officers to come up with these really very visual things inside the centre of Colchester, because we know it makes a difference to our tourist trade and the way that we as residents feel when we walk around the place, but keep it as visual as possible. That's the key for me, and we're going to see a lot coming on stream with the Towns Fund regen cash, but wherever we can find an opportunity, we have to be visual and make the most of our unique assets. I think it's really, really good to see, from Dr. Frank Hargreaves here, the words that support what we all believe in. But I may be wrong. Mr. McCarthy, do you have a view? You haven't said that a lot tonight, sir. Well, after that, does anyone else wish to say anything else? Councillor Willits.
Yeah, Chairman, on the action required, it's asked us to confirm satisfactory delivery against the strategic plan. I would say that is well exceeded. I mean, when one looks at the list of things that have been done, it is an impressive list. And I think we should be complimenting the administrations on what they have done in the activities surrounding the strategic plan. It's the second part that I have difficulty with. The council's made satisfactory progress. I mean, we don't really know whether what we see there is satisfactory progress or not. And as we've said, that issue is being dealt with for future years by making sure they're metrics. So I think perhaps we should just confirm, as is required, that satisfactory delivery is made, and perhaps we say not too strongly that satisfactory progress has been met, because a lot of work has been done, a lot of good stuff, and we just commend that the council is getting on with the delivery of the strategic plan, albeit it's final in its present form.
Thank you for that, Councillor Willits. It's probably worth also noting that His Majesty the King visited Colchester Castle, and that's not by accident, is it? It's because we have that facility, and what a great thing that was to happen. Okay, shall we move forward?
Yeah.
Okay, let's if everyone's happy, then let's move on to the next item, which is the Capita data breach, which is an item that was brought to this panel's attention for consideration by my colleague to the right here, Councillor Willits, and I know that Councillor Corey has given up his evening to come and to explain to us what's happened here, and we've got officers there also in support. So let's leave it to Councillor Corey, and Chisara, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Safe journey. And if Councillor Corey wishes to lead on this one, he may.
Thank you, Darius. Thank you, Chair. I get horrible feedback, but apologies as I'm driving home from work. If it is as painful for you as the feedback, what I will do is go fairly quickly to officers, and I'm hoping that Sam Prentice is there or one of her team to explain the situation. And I thank Councillor Willits for asking a number of questions early on when the data breach had occurred, and supporting us in how we hold Capita to account of it. So many of you will know that Capita is an organisation that deals in a number of council functions up and down the country. We have used them for a number of functions, a few less these days because one of them was our IT system we brought in-house, but a number of different functions where we do allow them to handle our data in an efficient way, where we believe it's better to go to the market for this. And we do have a contract in place that does require them to handle the data of our population with confidentiality, with it to be protected. Now, they have failed on this, and we are dealing with them at a national level. And we've been very open compared to many other councils about where we stand. And I think that's the right approach. So I welcome Councillor Willits asking for happy to hand over to the office to walk through where we've got to, where we are now, and of course, you'd expect me to be asking as a portfolio holder what kind of compensation, if any, we could get, and what learning can we put in place to ensure Capita don't cause a problem like this again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Corey. We did just about hear what you said, so thank you for your time. I don't know who's leading on this one. I can see that Sam's here, or if someone else wishes to take this one forward, I'll stop talking.
Thank you. So the report was actually written by our data protection officer, so I won't go into detail around it. The report very much focuses on the council's kind of policies and processes around ensuring that data is protected within our contracts. Hopefully you've been able to kind of read through that, and if you've got any questions, happy to take them. In terms of the breach itself, as you'll be aware, we've written out to customers. We haven't had a huge response to that, but I think that's probably owing to the fact that the letter was quite detailed. It gave everything that we could give. We are speaking with Capita still. We will be looking into what can be done in terms of recovering any costs. But otherwise, I think they are their investigations have finished, and the report kind of covers what they've found within that.
Thank you. I'm looking to Councillor Willits.
Chairman, I don't really want to discuss anything about this particular breach as to what Capita did or what Amazon S3 services did. I'm not permitted to do so. My sole interest is that we review the procedures under which sensitive information, confidential data, is given by this council to contractors, and that we ensure that when that happens, the contractor acknowledges that they are processing sensitive information which they've received from us, and what has happened, who was to blame, and so on. I think is interesting. The officers of the council can sort that out, but as a scrutiny panel, our interest should be to ensure that the procedures, if necessary, are revised so that we protect the public, because we oblige people to give us information so that we can assess their benefits and their council tax. They have no choice. They have to give us that information, and therefore we have an obligation that we must protect it. And if we give it to third parties for end-of-year processing, it must be protected as well by them as it would have been by us. And I believe we have an obligation to ensure that any third party is as meticulous in looking after that information as we do as a council when we process it. So that was my reason for bringing this forward. I start off with a couple of comments on the report that we have on item 12. My first comment is on item 4.5. Capita have secured the data and it is no longer accessible. That presumably should have read Capita have secured the data and it is no longer accessible via their systems, because it was reported elsewhere in the press, the grey hat warfare who keep a catalogue of all unprotected Amazon data buckets, had identified our bucket as one that wasn't protected, had published that information, and we know not which subscribers to grey hat warfare will have picked up the grey hat information and looked at, if not copied, our information, which just goes to show, Chairman, once you have a security lapse, you never really know where it's going. You can't really size the difficulty of the problem, which is why we should always get it right first time. Moving on down the report to paragraph 410, where I have significantly more concern, because 410 says that contracts are let by a tender process, which asks a series of data protection questions which are scored as part of the evaluation procedure, which is good. Where items are procured via the government online purchasing portal, G-Cloud, the G-Cloud standard terms and conditions are used, which is good. But then it says the council does not have data protection clauses in the terms and conditions for items purchased via purchase orders. So we have all the policies and procedures, the data protection policy, which Governance and Audit Committee have approved, but it was not effective on this occasion because apparently it was a purchase order. And 410 concludes this specific contract was procured via a purchase order. So seems to be a weakness there in that it is possible to let a contract which apparently does not reference and does not give the contractor a copy of our data protection policy and seek an obligation that they respect it when the information is being processed. I think there was another point on, no further reports on that. But that particular item seems to be the one that we need to dwell on. How can it be, if indeed it was, a contract can be let for year-end processing, the data given to a third party with no obligations handed on to that third party, which is what the report seems to say. I may have misinterpreted what was there, or the report may not be accurate, but I would just like some clarification to start off with, Chairman, whether the process by means of which the information was handed to a third party organisation for processing was indeed out with all the good work that we have in the council on the data protection policy.
Thank you, Councillor Willits. Some really good stuff there. And perhaps, Richard, you do have a view on this point that's been made about a purchase order contract versus a contract that has supplementary detail that binds both parties. And it might be we don't have the answers tonight, but at least that we know that this is a real issue that we need to look at, if not on it already.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I was really positive about this being brought to the scrutiny panel by Councillor Willits. I think there's a really useful item. So if there can be any kind of positive recommendations that come out of the discussions, we'd certainly welcome if it makes our processes more robust for the better of them, to make that point firstly. I just think a bit of clarity around Capita and our relationship with them, and perhaps Sam can just enlighten the panel. So in addition to this specific year-end process, the reason why Capita are purchase ordered to provide this service, Sam, I believe, is because they actually have a significant contract with us that was let through normal procurement measures to actually administer our financial data for benefits, etc. But I wonder, Sam, whether you can just confirm that we do have a large contract with Capita to operate our systems to handle this data that was procured through those mechanisms.
Sam, do you wish to come in?
Yeah, sorry, that's absolutely right. So we're covered by a wider contract, which is the provision of the systems that are used for revenues and benefits. And this was a purchase order to request an additional piece of work at that year-end point. In terms of the purchase order terms and conditions, it is something that we've absolutely picked up. So our data protection officer is going to look at that. One of the issues that we do have is that generally we wouldn't purchase anything like this through just a purchase order. It would be covered by a contract. The other thing is that normally when you purchase something quite significant, the other company will have their own terms and conditions, and it can sometimes mean that those, which terms and conditions come first? Is it ours or is it theirs? So it's something that we're unpicking with the legal department as well. But yeah, we are covered by a wider Capita contract.
I mean, I'm a layman in this field, Sam, but if I'm paying someone for a service, that I usually have an expectation that they'll meet my terms in a way, but I'm a layman in this matter.
Yeah, I think, so with the example of Capita, their data protection policies and procedures will be far in excess of anything that we would have internally. You know, they're a huge company. They process data for hundreds of local authorities. And unfortunately, in this situation, it was human error. It was someone that didn't follow their own procedures. So, you know, regardless of what we put in place, it's still likely that this could have happened. So we do have to kind of consider that ultimately we rely on people following the procedures and the policies that are in place, and that's not what happened in this particular case.
Chairman, I still don't quite follow. Paragraph 410 says the council does not have data protection clauses in the terms and conditions for items purchased via purchase orders. And that seems to be contrary. We're just hearing that there is an overall umbrella agreement with Capita, and that any small items which are added to the overall relationship with Capita are covered by the umbrella terms. That is not what the report says. So, you know, either the report that we have today is wrong, or the understanding of what happens when with a purchase order is wrong. But there is certainly a dilemma between the two issues. And I would add that just because an organisation is large doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
Sam?
I think the reason why it was mentioned in the report was really about the fact that we don't have those clauses within the purchase order. So that's something that we know that we need to pick up and we need to deal with. The example that I'm giving for the Capita is that was a situation where we were covered by a wider contract. So I do completely understand what you're saying, but it's just because we've grouped the two things together. So we know that we need to do something there. But in this particular scenario, we did have a contract in place. The purchase orders were obviously a number of years ago as well now, so we have changed things since then. But certainly in this situation, we have got a wider Capita contract.
So the report we have before us this evening is wrong, you're saying, and that the purchase order was part of a wider contract which did have data protection clauses in its terms and conditions, and those would have been carried through onto the purchase order. So the report before us is wrong. Is that what you're saying?
I don't want to say that the report is wrong. I think she's written it meaning something a little bit different to suggesting that it's not about the Capita contract. There are no clauses attached to our purchase order, and I think that's the point that she was making.
Can we have it up, please?
I think what Nicola's done here is she's been honest to say that we think there was an issue that when this was procured, that although we would have thought that we could be covered by the overall contract, there's some uncertainty around this purchase order process, and perhaps that might give rise to consideration of a recommendation for the panel at the appropriate time around being absolutely sure that our purchase order process is watertight in terms of data protection.
Councillor Rowe.
Just as an addition to that, have we done a full review to confirm that we don't have any gaps anywhere else, and it's just this particular purchase order process which has the gap? Can we verify that 100%?
Councillor Corey.
Sorry.
Thank you. The report is honest and transparent. Hopefully the feedback will reduce. The report is transparent and honest, and it's not wrong. Both things can be right at the same time. So what has been written in the report is that the purchase orders do not carry with them the terms and conditions. But what should have been written in the report, I suppose, is that that it is covered by the wider policy, so there is no gap in this particular instance. But what is being picked up by officers and by this review is that purchase orders should then have those terms and conditions attached for our data privacy. it's unlikely that that has ever been an issue, but it's a good thing to ensure in the future. So basically, the report in what it says is right, because in this specific example, it was not applied to this purchase order because that's not what we do, but it was covered by the parent contract. So what I'm saying is the report is both right, but is showing where we need to make the improvement in the future. But we can reassure members that this actually wasn't where a breach occurred. I'm going to stop because the feedback is awful, but I hope that's clear.
Okay. So I'm getting a sense here that we are all vaguely on the same page, which is that we know that a process here needs to be looked at around the T's and C's and the way in which potentially a supplier was able to use the fact that this particular part of their work was done with a purchase order. That's potentially exposed us a little bit, and we need to have a look at that, tighten things up so that our residents' data is robustly safe, and that if anything like this happens again, there'll be appropriate compensation for the trouble that we have to go through for it. That's not very articulate, so I'm going to look to Councillor Willits to tighten that up a little bit for me, and for us then to consider the next steps and the way forward.
Chairman, the Council's data protection policy, which has been approved by full Council, clearly states Council reserves the right to contract out data processing activities or operations involving the processing of personal data in the interests of business efficiency and effectively. No third-party data processors shall be appointed who are unable to provide satisfactory assurances that they will handle personal data in accordance with the data protection legislation, etc., etc. So it is the policy of the Council that whoever gets our data must process it securely. And I think we need a recommendation which says that no matter what the circumstances are, no matter how a contract is let, the requirements of our data processing policy must be respected by all contractors, and they must agree in writing that they accept that obligation.
I think that's a very appropriate way of putting it, and as I said earlier this evening, when I'm buying something, it's on my terms. Councillor Rowe, I'm looking at you. You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I fully agree with Dennis's point. It's just more around making sure that that's 100% watertight. Do we? I don't know. Does that cover everything, or do we need to do we need to sort of do a review on the wider policy and any other of these potential ways that we can hand data to third parties where we could possibly be put at risk in a similar scenario to this? Do we need the review, or does basically what?
I think Councillor Willits' recommendation might well give us the clarity we're all looking for. But I want to make sure that everyone is happy with that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. 100, yeah. Does that cover it 100%? Because I feel like either we need to do a review, or we need, I don't know. Do you see what I'm getting at, Dennis? I don't know.
Chairman, as a scrutiny panel, we can only look at process and procedures. We cannot monitor what every person in the council is doing. And if someone goes off at a tangent, they can put the council at risk. I think our role is to ensure that the data protection policy, well, but it's not our job, it's the governance and audits policy job, is to ensure that the data protection policy is there and it's written, and perhaps it's our job as scrutiny to ensure that that key clause in the policy is implemented under all circumstances, that no third-party data processor shall be appointed who is unable to provide satisfactory assurances that they can handle personal data in accordance with the data protection.
I suppose my point is, if that's already there, are we not enforcing something that already exists, and we're asking them, do you see my point? Do we need a review do we need a review to ask the council to provide something that already exists?
I don't know. I think it's a matter for the senior officers. The chief executive is appointed as the person responsible for information security in the council, and then there are line officers, and surely it's their day-to-day job to ensure that the watertight policies which we, the councillors, have agreed upon, and cabinet and council have ratified, is then carried out in day-to-day work.
Yeah, Richard.
I wonder whether some help around this point would just be mentioning the role of internal audit, and the fact that we do have a robust internal audit scheme, and in light of this and the concerns raised by the panel, I can perhaps, if you made a recommendation that officers can consider that this is actually part of the internal audit programme, I can ensure that's added. It's the way internal audit should work to respond to identified issues. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's what I'm getting.
So we have a recommendation on the table here. Do I see any dissent over this, or is this all sensible stuff? I think it's very, very good to see that. Okay, then we have that recommendation, and Owen, I know that you are fastidious and you scribe every word verbatim. Are you happy that you understand the recommendation from Councillor Willits?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So in addition to the recommendation that you just discussed, is it the panel wish for me to take down a recommendation, the earlier one that Councillor Willits made, recommending that all contractors must agree in writing to comply with the data protection requirements and policies of the City Council?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Can we also then get it in the? Sorry. So I was going to say, can we also get it in the internal review as well, in the internal audit? That's part of it. Yeah.
That was the one that I had for just at the end of that conversation. Yeah.
A really good conversation there. Councillor Willits, do you need anything else on this?
I'm happy, Chairman.
I think that's an excellent outcome. Councillor Corey, thank you for giving up your evening's commute in a lay-by or a service station or whatever you're doing right now in your car. Thank you for your time on that one. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Corey, before we say goodbye to you?
No, thank you. All good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Clifford's just pointed out, we just need to clarify to whom the recommendation is going. Is it going to Cabinet? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of that item, which I think takes us on to the work programme. Does it? Bear with me, colleagues. I prefer working on Apple computers. I just struggle a little bit. Work programme. There we are. Okay, so we all have a lovely month off in August, so we won't be back here, but we will be back here sharp on the 19th of September for the safety partnership meeting. I don't know if colleagues have a view on, who they would like to see there or what they'd like to see discussed. This is something that occurs every year, but please, through myself and Councillor Willits, if you want to have discussions about what you might want to see discussed there, please do so. That's the whole point of this. Or now, if you want to say something, please do so. Then on October the 3rd, the following meeting, we're having a look at neighbourhood services and waste, if possible. And obviously the review is going on as we speak, which is an ongoing review around this service, this offering. So it may or may not be the case that we can have a useful discussion on that night around it. We'll also be looking at the impact, I think, of city status. And then going forward, and I think this one is really important for us to get our hats on in November, and I'll stop at this point, but in November, we have the opportunity to look at developing skills for the future in Colchester. And this was something that last year's panel wished for us to explore. It seems entirely appropriate to do it. And I would imagine that we'd want to see in there some representatives from our educational establishments. Obviously, we have at least 2 rather large ones here, 3, 4, several in the FE and HE world. Maybe they would like to be able to come and have a chat with us, but also I think probably we do need some private sector businesses in there. And as you all know, Colchester is largely made up of SMEs. Actually, it might be that we would wish to consider a medium or a larger size firm to come in to discuss about the needs, the skills needs for the future, and how we as a collective can work towards making the most of that opportunity. Is there anything else that people wish to discuss under the work programme item? I'm seeing councillors.
I'm wondering if, although it's Essex, if we could have an opportunity to have highways in, because obviously the crossover, being a new councillor, I know people talk about potholes a lot. I didn't know how much it's so, and the state of the roads, and then obviously with all the planning things, highways are in it, the master plan, it's all linked to highways. So if there was an opportunity.
I'm not saying no personally, but I'm just, cogs are whirring. I'm thinking, there's a risk that suddenly we just have a sort of a big pothole session. There is that risk, isn't there? But actually, maybe there is a case for us to understand some of the challenges that highways face around, for example, the drains, the utility infrastructure. There might be wider issues that we as a planning authority might need to be mindful of and perhaps get educated on, particularly also in the context of the push for EV, because that's going to have an impact potentially, which also neatly ties into discussions that are very much alive at the moment around potential plans to blight our countryside with pylons. So there's some wider stuff there around infrastructure. I just don't know quite how you frame it, because I wouldn't want to see the cabinet member from Essex Highways coming in here just to get a pothole berating. I look to my learned colleague, Councillor Willits, here to give some thoughts on this matter, because you've been chair here before and you understand highways better than I do.
Oh, you're so kind, Chairman. I don't understand highways at all, other than the fact that they've got no money to fix the potholes. We could, and it's an interesting suggestion, we could have highways in as a matter of scrutiny, but of course there is the local highways panel where we are contributing city money into effectively a joint fund to have many of the smaller schemes carried out within the city. And I think, whereas there may be a bit of pushback on just asking highways to turn up and we take pot shots at them, there may be some useful scrutiny work that we could do by looking at the work of the Colchester City Local Highways Panel, looking at how effective our funding, I think it was almost £1 million we threw in last year, just how effective that is being spent, whether it is really adding to the delivery of road safety features within the city. And I think that is perhaps an issue where we would get greater traction from highways to come along and sit at the table. And then, of course, when we've finished discussing local highways panel, we can get out our shotguns and show the photographs of the potholes.
So just to clarify, it wasn't just potholes, it's things like the one-way schemes, reducing traffic on the highways. Like when we have planning things, we always have to look at Essex Highways, so it wasn't just that, but...
No, I think you make a good point there. Okay, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, there's a lot more than potholes that we like to raise. It won't just be a pothole session. There's a lot we'd like to talk about.
Okay, Councillor Rowe.
Just as a point, I mean, the administration quite often says that they feel they could do a better job than Essex County Council. It would be good to scrutinise if any documentation has actually been put together where they could sort of prove that fact, or at least discuss how they think they could do better, where they believe they could raise the additional money, because I assume basically a lot of this is ultimately down to where the funds come from. I suppose if we want to go down that route, I think that might be an interesting point to actually discuss. Is that just pie in the sky nonsense, or is that backed up by anything legitimate?
I think in taking Councillor Willett's approach to this and then giving that as a platform to look at wider issues such as, for example, you know, do we have the right approach to pouring asphalt over historic cobble sets? But there might be a safety implication of leaving the cobbled historic sets for some people, but other people who have a heritage penchant want to see those rickety old, very uneven, very, very awkward. You're in a motor vehicle and disability vehicle, if you've got a kid in a pram. Those kind of things are quite interesting conversations around the unintended consequences of just pouring asphalt. But I think there is some work to be done here. I think we can do something. We've just got to frame it right. I see Councillor McCarthy first, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Rowe.
Just a very quick one, because I'm someone that genuinely believes that we could potentially do it better, but I would like to see evidence. And I appreciate that's my party, I get that. But I'm someone that genuinely believes that we should look towards having a crack at it. So I would love to see LHP as a work item, because I think that's the local highways panel as a work item, because I think scrutinising that first, does it work? And the fact that, you know, I've been a councillor for this, my 5th year, you can only go to that if you're invited, sort of thing. It's not very open to my knowledge. So I think it'd be quite good to scrutinise them first, hopefully get someone from highways here as well. And then obviously there's a lot of work to be done as a council, but can we potentially have a recommendation to Cabinet about, as Councillor Rowe says, can we do something different? Because highways is simply not working.
Yeah, I agree pretty much with what Councillor McCarthy's saying. My only concern around bringing Essex County Council down is that we're not scrutiny for Essex County Council. So what do we, other than, as you say, just bringing them in to sort of have a go at them about various bits and bobs, what do we actually add value there? Bringing the local highways panel in does make more sense, because we actually have some degree of influence over local highways panel. And I think if we bring those in first, as Councillor McCarthy says, and then decide what we want to do afterwards, that seems to make more sense to me.
Great. Okay. I welcome that approach. I would like a wider conversation, because I note that quite often drains are sinking at the edge of the roads where there's asphalt, and in the old days where you had concrete in the post-Second World War estates, the drains don't sink. So for me, there's a case. I'd like someone to explain to me about the actual integrity of the products used in some instances. There's a real example I just gave you, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So Councillor Rose said one thing I was going to say, and that's just for the panel to think really carefully about kind of the so what of what you might end up recommending and to whom, because that there needs to be a so what, doesn't there, at the end of whatever you discuss, that you think it would be able to go somewhere. And obviously, in terms of recommendations, I think you can make recommendations. We can make recommendations to anyone, but in terms of actually having any bite, it's Cabinet. So just think about that. And just for Owen's benefit, if it is going to be the local highways panels, I'm assuming you'd want the chairman, Councillor Lissamore, for our local highways panel, just so we know who we need to invite. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, that was a great suggestion, wasn't it? I think we're in agreement. We need to look at this.
Well done.
It's been framed nicely, then we can give everyone a chance to explain how it all works.
Just one last on that last one. We'll go away. We'll have a look, see what date would work best for getting that onto the work programme, and then I'll bring it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and the group leads, and hopefully we can get that signed off and into the work programme.
Sorry, just one last point, Chair. On that point around bringing Councillor Lissamore in, would we need to bring someone in from Cabinet as well, or I don't know what the protocol is and sort of what the point is, but to the point of the so what and what do we recommend to? Ultimately, we are recommending to Cabinet. So do we need to make sure someone from Cabinet is there?
In fairness, Councillor Rowe, I'm sure the leader of the council would have been here this evening if it wasn't for the local government association conference happening. So I think that's a given. I think inviting Councillor Lissamore here is entirely right, and also I think it would be great to hear from officers with technical knowledge. You know, we can see all the statistics we like about how many potholes get repaired per capita versus what's happening in Norfolk. I'm sure that can be done, but I'd like to understand some of the nitty gritty around some of the thinkings around, you know, for example, putting pedestrian crossings over roads, whereas 40 years ago we were putting them underneath the roads. And I think we needed wider discussion around realm, safety, and it's not just safety in the context of cars, it's safety for people walking and cycling about the place. And I used my example earlier about the cobbled sets, you know, because they're not very safe, are they? But they look really nice. So what's the thinking on that? And I think we can have a really useful discussion around it. Okay, are we happy on the work programme for the time being? Great. Then we will move on to item 13. Yeah. What's 13? So we're done. Okay. Then that concludes the meeting this evening. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.